Hi, my name is Bob Grunier, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this 13th July 2025 to Coherent Energy Transformation, a new dawn. Okay, so yes, there was a little bit of delay at the start here to set up the bounce stream. If you want to join in the conversation directly, please go over to the remote view blog today, where you can see the link to the stream. Oh, now I've got someone saying I've got a loud mic. Sounds a bit tinny. Oh dear. My mic is clipping a bit. Okay, I've got complaints of clipping mic now. Okay, that was what the delay was, trying to get it not clipping. Okay, let me fix this. Oh dear, it's the opposite. So, excuse me for the clipping mic. Excuse me. Let me fix that. So it's clipping for people out there. Okay. Is this not clipping? Okay, we'll keep it like this. Is that okay? Is that a bit okay? Out there in YouTube land? Okay, all right. Tony Gibboni, he's a technical expert. I would definitely think if he says it's okay, it's okay. So let's go back to where we were. Coherent Energy Transformation. So, for those that didn't know, over the last several days, I have been running a poll. And thank you to the 109 people that voted. There were lots of other people that commented that didn't vote, and other people that voted and commented. So that's okay. And essentially what I was looking for here is a better description for the observed phenomena and its potential. So not just an explanation of the phenomena or something to do with its potential or something that was overly technical. I wanted something that would encompass both the actual phenomena itself, what we're trying to do, and the way in which you're actually doing it sociologically. So coherent for me, as I argued at great length in my blog, was something that I felt really sorted out, or rather described the process that was going on in this research. And for me, it was a word that I heard many times in my first couple of days in the field. And it was by one Vladimir Vysotsky here of Kiev National Shevchenko University. I consider him a friend in the field. He's an absolutely brilliant scientist. I have full respect for him. And he would always use this phrase, coherent correlated states. He'd say it thousands of times. And as I went on to say, he worked with Stanislav Adamenko. And the book that was produced, the story goes that essentially Stanislav Adamenko realized that a book on transmutation or nuclear synthesis, papers on transmutation and nuclear synthesis just weren't getting published in the mainstream physics journals. And so the idea was effectively to write all the papers you would have tried to publish and then to collate them into a book. In some respects, this is like the book of Matsumoto, although Matsumoto was successful in publishing his work in the mainstream journal of the American Nuclear Society Fusion Technology until 1994, when he mentioned ball lightning. And so that put an end to that. And since Stanislav Adamenko's Proton 21 lab actually started after the work was done, the kind of banning of those kind of things in fusion technology, it was probably a good move on Adamenko's part. As I've argued that this work at Proton 21 Labs, it was funded by the two oligarchs of Privat Bank. I can only remember one of them. Sorry to the other one, Kolomoisky. He was put in to disregard in recent years post the investment into this lab for various reasons. But anyway, two owners, oligarchs of a bank, funded this work, and it is, in my view, the most expansive systematic study in the field that was formerly known as low-energy nuclear reactions and cold fusion. And you can't really argue that when you are synthesizing elements that are heavier than anything in our near universe, it is really fusion that is going on, although I'm sure some will try. And when you are causing matter to fall apart into some things less than a nuclei, it's not really what we understand as fission. So something more interesting was going on. And in his book, I noted that the word coherent was said 46 times. And given the fact that this is over 750 pages long, that's actually not many times. But the interesting thing is the places that it was used were very, very key to the understanding of the process. And I noted here, when I'm writing here, Ed, that is my commentary on the subject here. So, for instance, in this statement here, it says, collective self-consistent, coherently accelerated motion of a set of particles of matter where the centripetal component or centripetal component of the momentum of each particle is much higher than its thermal chaotic component. Brings a portion of matter made of those particles into a special collectivized critical state. And this is my note here where I have Ed at the end. Coherent centripetal matter is coherent matter wave. So when he's saying where the centripetal component of the momentum of each particle is much higher than the thermal chaotic component, so this is the coherent component is much higher than the chaotic component, that is thermal. That means the de Broglie wave has a different kinetic energy, therefore the matter wave is not the same for each of the individual similar atomic nuclei, protons, neutrons, and or electrons. The same type of matter in the same kinetic energy is varied by the thermal energy to have a different de Broglie wavelength. So if they have the same de Broglie wavelength, they can become coherent. If they're in phase, they can become coherent, and that's what a SASER is, a sound laser type thing, or a maser, a microwave laser, or a laser, a light laser. But when it's centripetal, you'll remember the phrase from the discussion paper that I talked about from the ball lightning magnetohydrodynamic classified work that I referred to recently. They said, we are talking about centripetal waves, and that is matter waves. So essentially what he's talking about here is coherent centripetal matter, and that is coherent matter wave, and therefore more coherent matter wave in the same space leads to gravitational collapse. And this is essentially, if you, for instance, get a lot of electrons going around in that Kerr-Newman black hole phase singularity, that effectively creates more and more matter in the form of a matter wave in that ring singularity, and through the center of the ring singularity, it is bound together by an azimuth, which is the gravitational azimuth through the center of that ring singularity of matter wave. That is essentially the same as what binds together a Geon 1954 paper by John Archibald Wheeler. And if you build and build and build, you end up with gravitational collapse. And he refers to a particular paper later on. And so I encourage you to read these phrases if you haven't got access to the book. I think I provided a link where you can download that in a previous presentation. But I encourage you to buy it if you have got the $160, $170 it costs to buy it for the digital version. But even though he only has 46 uses in his 754-page book, right before the references on page 751, Stanislav writes an epilogue. And in that epilogue, he uses the word 8 times in the first 2 paragraphs. In fact, there's one more paragraph on this page before it goes to the next page where it lists all of the incredible things that the understanding will enable. And maybe I'll pull that up for you, I don't know. But of course, before he was doing his work, there was M. Solen's quantum coherent patent, and this was in 1992. And in this much shorter patent, he uses the word coherent 15 times, and I selected a couple here. I selected one because he's effectively talking about a matter wave. So he says, Bose condensate moves orderly. It is characterized by the existence of a mechanism of non-dissipative flow. So it's basically superfluid, and it's not spreading out. It's staying within its own confines, which would kind of indicate that it is self-confining. That is to say, I would argue that that is magnetohydrodynamic flow. It is not just a set of quanta with random parameters, but a classical coherent wave. So I would argue that this is a description in his terms of a matter wave. Is formed in accordance with the laws governing the implementation of structural phase nuclear transformations and the combination of electromagnetic, gravitational, and nuclear forces. And so that is unification of the forces in the center of this structure, which is a superconducting nuclear condensate. Therefore, it is detected spontaneously without chemical etching of nuclear fusion product due to the implementation of coherent, ultra-fast explosive crystallization. And so what it's saying here is when the matter wave collapses, it instantaneously and all at the same time as it, in my view, re-enters the ordinary vacuum pressure, it instantaneously all forms into new crystals. Okay, so this makes elements that, or compounds or alloys that you can't ordinarily make in nature or in normal natural processes, rather, that you might technologically use. And so the coherence aspect here, this is the coherent state, the coherent matter wave state that it's in, and its self-organized structure that is able to maintain its form. Thank you very much, Vanilla Isis, for your $10. But down here, this is the sort of collapse from this, and we've seen this in many experiments. The one that I really like, I shared in Azizi for the first time, and it was the collapse of a coherent matter wave beam, in my view, that was coming out of a Henk-Uren experiment. And if you remember, it was like a open braided diamond structure, where each of the filaments was separated from each other. And it's just impossible for, in my view, a normal diamond to grow in that way, or for a any technological process other than this to produce this. And since then, we've seen many of these braided structures come out of these fractal toroidal structures. The use of an electronic furnace is a quantum nuclear reactor to initiate controlled self-sustaining chain reactions of nuclear fusion, the formation of magnetic charges. These are magnetic monopoles. That's a euphemism for it. He never actually says monopoles. He always says magnetic charges. The generation of... In fact, that might be more accurate since it's a topological monopole. The generation of superconducting currents and coherent radiation. So this is the photonic radiation that's coming off that's coherent. So if the matter is coherent and it's disturbed, then if it's releasing energy like in the Tukhonov pattern, you can imagine that the radiation would be coherent. The generation of electrical, magnetic, electromagnetic, gravitational, and sound energy, and the production of chemical elements as a result of nuclear fusion. And even before Adamenko and even before Matsumoto, of course, Ken Shoulders was dealing with coherent electron bunches, which is a phrase that's used somewhere up here. And he had been researching them extensively. And I talked about, he's talking about dark matter messengers. So he's talking about how you can use this possibly to do communication. And that the fact that these things talk to each other, and so on. So without going into everything here, a big watershed moment for me was Edmund Storms going on the public record at a cold fusion conference, that is to say the ICCF 26 in Morioka, the last one, just held in May. where I got him to admit that these coherent electrons that could be enabling all cold fusion processes could be explained by the work of Ken Shoulders, and Ken Shoulders is saying that it's coherent electrons, fluidized electrons specifically, and that these are also what they are is essentially the same thing as ball lightning. So I basically went for coherent. The other reason I went for coherent, really, honestly, is to essentially it's a word that if you're going to go forward and do something, then you want to work together. And that is what the MFMP has always been about. It's about working together to a common goal for the common good of humanity. And at ICCF, I'm just going to, there's two cameras I'm looking at right now, so I'm just going to kill the share at the moment. I wanted to share my reasoning on this. One of the MIT group got up and gave a very good presentation. And at the end of the presentation, I said, you know, it's all very well. I said something like, in investment terms, you have a thing called a moat. And this is a barrier over which your competitors will have to span before they can catch up with you. And I said, palladium deuterium, really, because it's using heavy water, which is not easy to get for most people, and it's using palladium, which is an expensive precious metal. If you ever get it working, it's automatically really only going to be for the military. And then the person giving this talk there, he said, well, you know, they said that about transistors. They were using an expensive system element to start with and whatever, but they transferred the knowledge to a different system. And that was their argument. And I fundamentally disagree. Because if you're using something like nickel, in the case of nickel, it is not a material that absorbs hydrogen. Palladium is unique. Thomas Graham, FRS, discovered in 1870s that it was the element that absorbed hydrogen more than any other element, and that has not changed. And so if you get something working where it is the hydrogen is in the lattice, then for systems where it's on the surface or it's in other forms, then it's not going to be the same things. You're not going to look for the same impurities. You're not going to look for the same crystal structures. It's going to be a huge moat. So I strongly disagree with that. The second thing is there's been an attempt since the NASA work to rebrand this as lattice-assisted nuclear reactions. And there's this word nuclear, which has always been a problem in this field. And nuclear, for me, and actually for the fusion community, is where you get two nuclei coming together and you bash them together at high energies, and the kinetic energy of the particles overcomes the Coulombic repulsion, and you get the strong force taking over and the fusion occurs. Well, this is okay to say, but this doesn't appear to be what's happening in my view. And the fission process is where you have a particle coming in this case a neutron, and it causes the nuclei to split. And these do not appear to be the kind of processes that are going on. Neither of these processes really are gravitational collapse. Neither of these processes really are vacuum cluster decay or vacuum cluster compression, which I believe is actually what is going on in LENR, low-energy nuclear reactions. And so LENR isn't even the correct phrase. So if there's an attempt to change it to lattice-assisted nuclear reactions, there's a real problem with that, because there's no lattice in a cavitation experiment of Binger and Huang, or in the experiments of Kladoff or in Rosh Hashanah. There's no lattice, as it were, in the dusty fusion of Dr. George Eagley. These systems are automatically excluded. So that phrase and the palladium deuterium fusion, I have to say, I've never felt, I guess, so happy that we got to a point of understanding, but disappointed in certain directions that the field is going in. And those directions seem to be backwards rather than forwards. And that's just the reality. Now, is it cold fusion? Well, Pons and Fleischmann never liked the term. It was given to them by Stephen E. Jones. And so this is not a term that we should feel sorry about. We know where it came from. Stephen E. Jones. It's almost a mockery term. Like, I don't know, it's fusion, but it doesn't produce a lot of temperature. It's cold fusion. It's like, great, you managed to fuse a few atoms. Well done. But it doesn't produce any useful heat type thing. It's almost a term of mockery. And in fact, although the International Conference on Cold Fusion, ICCF, is called that, it's kind of a legacy hangover because it's always been called that. So once you start calling something, you can always call it that. So given the fact that most of the people have done the incredible pioneering work, like Mikhail Solen, like Ken Shoulders, like S.V. Adamenko, like Takaki Matsumoto, they understand it's a collective effect, it's a coherent effect. I think coherence for me is the key. And that's why I think I need to stick with that. Obviously, we're talking about energy. It goes without saying. Now, coherent can actually be applied to, as I said earlier, thinking about how you are going to do something, working together, not only the actual scientific process. Energy, as I said, it's a non-brainer. It kind of has to be in there. And it's kind of a hark back to low energy nuclear reactions. Now, again, low energy and cold fusion. It's like they're almost mockery. Low energy, it's like you're not getting a lot out of it. Now, the argument is it takes low energy to activate the nuclear reactions, and that's the idea. But if we're not certain that this is nuclear, and it certainly produces a lot of excess heat in cavitation and would appear to in some other systems, then we don't have to call it low energy. We don't have to call it nuclear. And we can do away with those terms. Now, transformation for me, and just let's go back to the slide here. What actually happened was transformation was the only one that went over 51%. It stepped back down to 46%, and as more of you voted, it edged back up to 50%. And right after the polls closed, someone reached out to me, and he said, you know, in hindsight, probably I would have done not reformation, I would have done transformation. And I was going to consider rerunning the poll, but since the first person that contacted me said basically I'd swing my vote, then, you know, essentially I think I'm going to go with transformation. Now, for me, transformation is, I don't know if you saw that actually. Sorry, I need to share this in a different way so people on the stream can see it. Where are we? Oh dear, I get confused. Too many desktops. Here we go. All right, we'll go like that, and we go like that, so you can all see it. Lovely, excellent. Okay, I had met Ken into the room. Okay, so what I was saying was transformation, like I say, it was the only one that went over 51%, but in the fullness of time, it ended up at 50%. But like I say, at the last moment, after the polls closed, someone said, actually, in hindsight, I should have probably gone for coherent energy transformation. So if no one objects, I'm going to stick with that. Now, transformation is it's, in my view, a very positive term. It is converting effectively an energy form into another. And so, an energy form might be kinetic energy. So you're taking nuclear energy and converting that into motion. But in the case of transformation, when you're talking about motion, a transform in mathematics is almost going from one point in space and time all the way over to another point in space of time. It's not a subtle transformation, although technically it can be anything in between. But a transformation in terms of movement often is something that is big. And in terms of a sociological change, a transformation is not a subtle change. It's not an incremental change. It is a large change, but a transformation. Like if you were to go into a wasteland where it's got toxic sludge from an industrial process and you're going to transform that, well, you wouldn't transform it into something even more toxic and wasty, would you? You would transform it into something that is positive and maybe remediate the environment so that you had something that looked a little bit more like our first slide here. And you would put in some reed beds and you would take the toxic waste and you would pass it through the reed beds and you would transform it from an uninhabitable place to a place where nature would want to thrive. And when you've got a place that nature would want to thrive, we're part of nature, it's going to be good for us too. So for me, transformation isn't just the process of converting one energy form into another. It is the process of doing it in a way that is positive. And so the phrase coherent energy transformation, for me, I think is a good one. It sums up the process by which you do it, and you do it well. I mean, there's other ways to transform energy, but they're not really coherent. They're kind of like lighting a match and letting it blow up. That's not really what I would call coherent. It's like the nuclear bomb approach to warming a city. It's not really one that's doing a transformation that's positive. Or it's definitely doing a transformation, but not one I would consider positive. And it's not really coherent. It's just all at once. It's not doing it with positive intent. So that's my view on it. I'm going to ask the people in the chat if they want to have some comments on that before I go and talk about a couple of other things that have been going on and a little overview of a document. So I'm going to switch out of this. And if people in the chat have got some comments or they want to ask some questions or in the YouTube, let me know. So anyone want to comment in the on the Zoom call? Raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand. As you wish. I know one of you hasn't got a microphone. One of you hasn't got video. Anyone want to comment? Right, I'm going to have a look. Okay, so... Yeah, so Malcolm Bendel's in the chat. Yeah, I promoted his latest video from Jordan Collin that he put out a few days back within the week. And they're reporting about a 60% gain in fuel efficiency, which gets it closer to 50% on a petrol engine, which is really rather good in terms of efficiency for a high internal combustion engine. So that's great. So Gordon Doherty, transformation has all the advantages as a term you mentioned, Bob. I like it. Excellent. Thank you for the vote of confidence there, Gordon. Yeah, I think having nuclear in the word when you're not sure it's nuclear anymore is counterproductive. I know there's been a lot of calls to remove it from the term or discussing this field. And I don't think it's just about actually, how should I put this? It's not just about converting elements to another element. It might actually be complete matter collapse. And that is nuclear burning in a way that is far beyond fusion even to gain energy. Converting actual baryons to light and leptons is far, far, far beyond fusion. I think we worked out it's about 160 times. The challenge is that you lose a proportion of the energy to the neutrino when you do conversion to light and leptons. And so, you're going to... But the question is the vacuum gradient, which causes the baryon to collapse, when it synthesizes the anti-quark to create the meson that goes in, when you have the magnetic color disconfinement of baryons, is that a gain when the quark and antiquark decay into an electron, a photon, and a neutrino? Do you actually gain that more than you actually put in? And those are all questions that will be answered in the fullness of time. So Contraption says, have any of the thunderstorm generators been compromised by the EVOs? I don't know, but I have suggested that when the Swedish group get their ones that they have purchased, because they put an order in some time ago, when they do some tests, I would be happy if they do a control and run it for a very short amount of time in an active state, and then I examine that to see what there is there. I think there's, because carbon is the thing that stops these things from damaging other things, and you're in a hydrocarbon engine, I think you're going to be okay. I think the damage will come if you just try and run it on water, if that's possible. It might just damage it. So we know from a Marsa gas can, below the melting point of tungsten and below the melting point of titanium, cause those elements to transmute. But if you add carbon into the mix, in the term about 10% of something like propane, then it doesn't do any transmutation. It just gets hotter, but it doesn't do any transmutation. So I think that's good. So Dan Moretti is saying transformation is broad enough to encapsulate the enormous variety of processes going on in this field of study. I agree. It's not about just about what it's doing. It's also about what it can do, as essentially what you're saying, and I agree. So nuclear Pepsi, says John Coombs. Pepsi Zero. Doesn't have any sugar, colouring, flavourings. Doesn't even have any carbon dioxide. No, it's not just water, it's Pepsi. Yeah. So Amalekita says, I think what you've been working on is the part of the larger Unity model. Yeah. Yeah. So I think you mean run well. So Malcolm is saying, agree, Bob, needs at least 10 to 20% fuel to fun well. I think he means run well, yes. So Amalekita says, do you believe in spherical light speed oscillators being the reason for yin-yang vortex wormhole you've been seeing? Listen, I'm going to talk more about the connection between the yin and the yang creating a wormhole. I've had a lot of, how shall I put this? I've had a lot of visions recently about the flow pattern inside the magnetohydrodynamic structure inside the fractal toroidal geometry. I'm going to meet some people. I could do the animation myself, but there's other things I'd like to be doing as well. So, but I think sooner or later you're going to be able to see how it's working. But actually, it's already in the physical data that I've shared. If you study the physical data that I've shared, you'll know what is going on. Okay, thank you, Amalekita. So, Squirrel says, what types of EVOs are there? White, grey, and black, north and south monopole EVOs, and positively charged with positive ions. Okay, so Squirrel, Ken Shoulders observed 3 distinct types in terms of charge: positive, negative, and neutral. Okay. He also observed white and black modes. He also observed toroidal and spherical structures. And did he observe north and south monopoles? Well, what he did say in his 1987 book Conclusion, he says that it's a perfect monopole oscillator. Okay? And you could consider that to be a yin-yang, but presently on the outside of the non-radiating boundary in a properly formed spherical structure, there is no electromagnetic component coming out. But if you go into that structure, you might get captured by the topological asymmetric monopole-like nature of one of them. And you might have a yin structure and you might have a yang structure. I've also considered that there might be some that express more easily their electric charge or their magnetic charge. And the reason I say that is because, and I will do a whole presentation on this, because you don't only see it in the Binger and Huang reactors, you also see it on the fused quartz where the ball lightning has impacted in it. And that is to say that what you get is, you get some of them, they go in with the apple with its tornado facing down. But sometimes it goes 50% in. And this is also for the subquanta. They go 50% in, but upright, as it were. So they're either flat down or they're upright, or they can be flat in. Now, is it because they were traveling directly in the direction orthogonal to the surface and they embedded themselves in and got locked there? Possibly. Or is it because the strength of the substructures pulled it in and it got embedded on the side? Possibly also. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a different presentation. I've prepared all the graphics for that. I wanted to do it a couple of weeks back, but there were other things going on. Okay, so how does this all align with Guy Davis's SPD theory? I have no idea. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. Okay. There's lots of theories. I just really, I kind of like, I started with 79 theories, or 70 theories at ICCF 13 years ago. You know, some of what was being talked about is definitely there in the record. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is arranging for my Cosmic Summit video to be published this week. I put that aside to do this, get this term settled. So hopefully we'll get that out the door next week. I'm working hard on the Matsumoto book. It's absolutely beautiful to be digging into these images at very, very high res. Understanding after understanding is coming. Let me just see if I can pull up a couple of images here for you to peruse right now. So this is an image, for instance, that was basically impossible to see what was going on. Now this is a lead ball, but you can see it's one of these hollow balls, and it's got crenellations on it. Now, depending on the element, when the crenellations come out, they form a different kind of structure. We know and love the ones that are iron and oxygen, but this one is at least lead. And you can see it's a hollow ball. It has the hole at the end, and it has these crenellations over it. In the actual book, you cannot see these crenellations, or it's just not enough there to be clear. What should we have a look here? This is a very big image, if it's going to let me show it. And this is a famous one. He liked this a lot. But if we go into this, we can actually see so much detail in here. And I'll do a more detailed presentation on this. But I think this is actually a hollow sphere. He kind of draws it as a sphere. But I think it's this thickness. It's this thickness. And what's happened here is it's dyed here. What you're seeing is what's called in 3D graphics a Fresnel effect, where the structure is dying and the substructures are collapsing onto the plate, but you're getting more on the edge because there's effectively a kind of higher density at that point. Now, I believe that these substructures are the basic exotic vacuum object that were synthesized in the core of a much larger ball lightning and form its skin. And you can see this is 50 microns here. So this is a 50 micron structure. Okay, it's really rather large when the basic structure is 1 micron. So this might be your 1 micron exotic vacuum object, right? And this is form a spherical structure. And I believe that in the center of this is the magnetohydrodynamic structure that not only makes these, but also keeps these at this non-radiating boundary. Okay, and down here, interestingly, where it's sat here, you can see a clear wave pattern. Okay, and I think this wave pattern here is something to do with what you see similarly on the outside of the Binge-Wen Huang structures. Anyway, and essentially this is a spherical structure that's moving through, but internally it has probably this incredibly small magnetic core, which is magnetohydrodynamic, made of electron, quark, gluon plasma. And it's still feeding stuff in, and it's throwing these little ball lightning out onto the boundary. And it's this kind of structure that I think now is the thing that cut the spherical section, the 15 millimeter ball lightning spherical section, out of the copper pipe from the Vega experiments of Henk Urien. Because if you can imagine these kind of moving around on this non-radiating boundary, wanting to try and get in, but caught up with the overall turbulence on the boundary, then it makes sense what you actually see, those little scalloped areas taken out, but also with the beam coming down. So I think these are little structures that are quite persistent. And so you've got a torus here. This is a torus, and this is your tornado coming out here on this one. If I get rid of my mugshot there, you have a torus here. And these are kind of either held in position or they rotate around. And that, in my view, is an explanation for what we see the ball lightning cut. And of course, so when we saw the tungsten chop shop, it was on the what we call the double layer. And I believe it's this double layer here, this area here, where you've got an area where they want to come in, but they can't come in. And they get stuck on the boundary. And that is, in my view, the skin of a ball lightning. This is the bit that causes the ball lightning to glow. And so this here will result in the tungsten being chopped. And you literally physically saw that on the video. You can see that the thing gets spun up, and then not inside and not over here does it get cut. It gets cut on this boundary layer. And so the same thing that is causing those marks in the copper is the bit that does the chopping of the tungsten wire in another Henk Urien experiment. And moreover, if you can imagine this as a ball lightning structure, as per the one by Leonid Oroitskiev with exploding metal titanium foils in water and the ball lightning that appears above, what happens is these are loosely bound together by the magnetohydrodynamic structure that's in the core. But when that fails, these ones break off, and they are much tighter bound together. and they come away. And you can see this in his series of frames where he shows the ball lightning from a top view with a mirror and from the side view with the straight on of the camera. And then after a number of milliseconds, the small micro ball lightning travel away from the larger ball lightning structure. So I think I'm going to be able to do a very, very detailed explanation of what is going on with ridiculously high levels of fidelity of what is actually going on, because this is actually on an X-ray film, and so you're looking down the barrel. This is the torus here, but here you're looking at a torus, and this is the cone. Okay, this is the tornado coming into the torus. In my view, something like that. This is the cone. So the long bits are the tornado. Whereas, so here, this is the head and the tornado. Head and the tornado. Okay? Now, you see exactly the same kind of fuzzy marks on the impact marks from Henk Uren's Vega experiments, where we create the torus in a tube, and it has a fuzzy ball around it, and then it collides into the fused quartz, and we get a geometric structure. And on the outside of the geometric structure, we have exactly this kind of fuzzy like marks. And I think it's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's a couple of ones there. What else have we got? Some absolutely beautiful images in Matsumoto's work. We've seen that one before. Maybe this one. These are very large images. So here, this is actually in study of earthquakes. So these are exploding structures and the filaments that they send out, which are very nice. What have we got here? Anyway, these are all going to be in the book. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on next week when this finally comes up. Okay, that's just too big. Oh dear, it's nearly 2 gig, that image. We'll forget that. Okay, so then I have had a conversation with Griffin Brock, and Griffin hopefully will join us in Santa Cruz, and we are going to try some real-time coherent energy transformation experiments, where we will try and replicate the coherent energy transformation experiments of Dr. Alexander Parkhomov, but we're going to do it in a novel way. We're going to be using the Griffin Brock Desmitron tube to see if we can trigger the heat production in lithium fluoride. We're also going to try some remediation of nuclear isotopes. So we're going to buy some sodium-22, some cesium-137, some cobalt-60, some polonium maybe, some, what else are we going to buy? Something very, very heavy, 204. What's 204? Not lead. Anyway, we're going to buy a whole range of beta isotopes, 1 or 2 beta gamma isotopes, and at least 1, maybe 2 alpha isotopes, and see if we can change their decay rate. So it's going to be difficult to real-time monitor it, but we're going to characterize the current spectrum of energies coming out of the isotopes, and then we're going to expose them for, let's say, 12 in 24 hours to the Desmitron to see if we can do, yes, thallium-204. Thank you very much. Good, Marty Engel. My brain was farting then and it couldn't work it out. If this works, then we will have both a source of strange radiation, which we can understand from a biological point of view, pure, clean, strange radiation, not dirty, strange radiation. And it's also a means by which we can demonstrate real-time coherent energy transformations, and also a means by which we might be able to remediate the waste at Fukushima and at Chernobyl but do it through the beam form, actually being at a distance and projecting it in. And I have confirmation also from Griffin that the beam nearly travels 1,000 feet, which is in excess of the base of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which means we should be able to use this. He did some modifications to enable it to travel that far, which is incredible. And one thing that he didn't realize what he was saying when he was saying it in our call was that when he's running the tube for a period of time, he has to turn it off. So it's like, this is why we would do 12 hours in 24, because the aluminium electrode glows at about 900 degrees because it's orange hot. And I thought, Griffin, that's not possible. He says, no, it really does glow orange hot, so it must be 900 degrees. I said, well, no, because it's kind of like aluminium melts at 706 degrees or something. All right. Well, anyway, a lot below the temperature at which it goes orange. I said, yeah, aluminium glowing orange. That is very familiar. Anyway, if that's actually a phenomena, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to capture it. And that's going to be also extremely, extremely interesting to see. Glowing orange aluminium. Now, in other tests that we've done in Jan Rack's lab, where we will be doing the Alchemy of Prague later in the year, you'll actually be able to participate in real-time transmutation experiments and witness them and actually be part of the experiments. He's built an incredible version of the Vega experiment. An incredible setup, so you're going to probably see some videos on that later in the week. And I went there to, propose some improvements and so forth. So he's going to put a big vacuum chamber on there to faster cycle the experiment so you can get the experiment running quicker. He's going to get a bigger chamber. But I need to do some strange radiation assessments on that, the new experiment chamber that they're building. But I suggested an experiment that I hoped would produce fluidized electrons. It was inspired by an experiment that was done by Henk Uren, and it would appear to have produced fluidized electrons on the first attempt. So this is really awesome, because it's those fluidized electrons that, if we can reliably produce them, they are the things that will produce propulsion. According to Ken Shoulder's 2004 paper, they will produce what did he say? Ounces of apparatus will lift many tons of material into space against the gravitational pull. So ounces lifting tons against the gravitational pull. And in my view, you set up in your fluidized electrons whatever it is, which essentially, ultimately, he says the base EVO is a quark-gluon plasma itself. But when you get this coherent structure producing a coherent superconducting magnetohydrodynamic structure, it will then have a gravitational azimuth that will be absurdly phenomenal through its core. And I think that will be the basis on which it works. And in line with what I just read in the gravitational collapse mode of the Proton 21 Labs, SV Adamenko. And he says a slight modification of this will produce very, very effectively, directly produce electricity. Okay, so this deep, deep understanding of what plasma toroids actually is, that it is a quark-gluon plasma, electron quark-gluon plasma that enables in this submicron or around about a micron state to self-sustain, that is and produce a resilient ether flow. I think this deeper understanding of what they are is going to give us all kinds of wonderful coherent energy transformation technologies. Okay, so then the last person I wanted to talk about is that I am going to meet a very famous person in the field, and I need to share my screen here for Ken Pratt, who is the last person on the call. Share, and I want to do here. You can join the call if you want to talk to directly. That would be great. If you don't want to, that's okay too. Okay, not that. I don't want to do that. I want to quit out of that. I want to go here. And I want to go window. Where did I go there? Not that one. Window. No. Oh dear. Maybe? No. I'll be with you shortly. Oh, here. It's already here. So, I hope to be seeing Robert Nelson. Robert Nelson. People are saying, who's Robert Nelson? Robert Nelson, my dear friends, is the proprietor, instigator, and incredible researcher extraordinaire behind the rexresearch.com site. And if we are going to be working together coherently to bring about this energy transformation, then I think there can be no better person to give credit to than Robert Nelson. Robert Nelson has not only done work on alternative energy, he's also done a lot of work on transmutation studies and alchemy. He has sister sites. But after my presentation last week, referring to these O-Day birdies, someone, a guy who calls himself Montauk, referred to this David Wells work. Okay, so there's just a couple of things that I wanted to pull out of here. It's about this modified Newman motor that he produced, that he said produced profound effects upon the weather, his health, and fauna and flora. So I'm just going to read a few things in here. He says he experimented with Dr. Wilhelm Reich's Cloudbuster, double helix coil Leyden jar electrostatic charge here, electrostatic charge. We know what that is talking about, and so on. So this is supposedly what it was, fairly simple device. He ran it for extremely long periods of time. And Robert Nelson says that he lost or doesn't have all of the notes, but he says in the page 2 onwards of his notes, clouds would appear straight between my machine and the sun. It appeared that the machine was doing something to the sky. To my knowledge, we have nothing that does this. The effect was weak, and the weather could overpower the machine and close the hole in some days. Anyway, there's all sorts of things about weather and altering hailstorms, and he then made a number 2 machine, which seemed to be a lot better, and then he did some experiments on that, and blizzard control spring, and so on. And then machine number 5, because of the intense power of the new machine, I can't get too close for it for any length of time without getting sunburn. It's like a stove. It gets too close and you get burned. Well, could this be that it is producing a lot of chi flux and doing the same kind of damage that was experienced by that guy picking up the so-called alien vehicle engine, maybe, whatever it was in the box? I decided to build a small machine for general purpose. So what he's talking up here is, that it actually harmed him. Okay, so he built a small machine. La 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 la. Okay. In January of 1997, I noticed stationary radar images during storms. At first, it would appear as a dot that hid, not move with a passing storm. The dots were arranged in a diamond-shaped pattern. You'll be able to pick out many such zones if you review the past year's weather. The precision of the locations is too geometrical to be natural. Some form of resonance is causing them. I believe they are involved in weather control. The machine is able to change the zones over a very large area, possibly the whole world. The cause of these areas involves the new force or energy that is made by my device. These zones are capable of generating very intense storms that just seem to sit there and dump rain. They can also cause intense tornadoes. I think they are the very cause of tornadoes. If a tornado watch is issued, I have found that directing the machine generally eastward, and shifting the direction about 15 degrees every 20 minutes until the watch is over will result in no tornadoes. Hitting the ground, Doppler radar will detect tornadoes, but they won't make it to the ground. South Texas. And so I think that he's pulling the chi out of the environment. And of course, eastward is the way that the planet rotates. This is into the natural background neutrino flux. Okay? So he's saying if you face it generally eastward and shift it, then he can prevent the tornadoes from hitting the ground. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I asked what the dew point was. 69 was the answer. I always love it when they come up. So he's talking about making rain. Okay, vortex. I left Norman and went into Sedona, Arizona. It was here, the answer to the puzzle was found. I checked into a campground in Sedona and went to the rear of the truck to set up the camper. I noticed huge quantities of stuff. I'm going to call the radiation stuff because I don't know what it is yet coming out of the machine. The power level was so high that you could feel it 10 feet from the machine. The machine wasn't even running. The power was at least 1,000 times the marble rock level. We went into town to shop for souvenirs. I bought a vortex map of the Sedona area, which is famous for its telluric energy. The vortices are located on a diamond-shaped pattern around the area. I took a machine to the airport Mesa vortex and ran a few tests. The sky was completely covered by clouds except for a small hole directly above the vortex area. I set up the machine and set it to clear the sky. Huge quantities of stuff rolled out of the machine. The sky cleared off to a diameter of about 60 miles in 10 minutes. I videotaped the event. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. The Indians knew about this. Okay, health effects. Shortly after I began working on this thing, I developed a curious rash. I thought I had chickenpox or shingles or something. The doctor could not find a cause. I told him about the motor. He said it couldn't cause anything like that. He gave me pills and cream, and that didn't work. After about 2 months, the rash disappeared on its own. The machine was shoved under the bench and shut down at this time. I think when I shut the machine down, the rash cleared up. When I restarted the machine on May the 18th, 1997, the rash reappeared, only on a different part of the body. The original rash was on my chest and arms. The new condition was attacking my right leg. I went back to the doctor and got more pills and creams, and that didn't work. The doctor couldn't find a cause. Oddly, in spite of the affliction, I felt great. At 52 years of age, I was working 18-hour days with no fatigue, a rush job in the shop, and we put in a couple of 36-hour days to get the thing out of there. It seemed that if the machine was pointed to the east, it created a condition of total insomnia, which enable you to work for very long times without fatigue. So, if you're facing it to the east, I would suggest that it was absorbing chi and allowing the brain to just work, right? Okay. There was a comment that I've read somewhere where Tesla actually tried to sleep on one of his coils. The rash on my right leg did not subside during the summer and fall of 1996. On December the 18th, 1996, I decided to shut down the machine to see if the machine might be the cause. Sure enough, it began to clear up. The machine was restarted on January the 6th, 1997. The rash reappeared. I had not welded anything for some time. Hold on a minute. This guy's a welder. This guy is a welder. About January the 10th, a guy came to the shop with a thing to weld. I took the wire welder and made a weld about 12 inches long. As I watched, the backs of both hands broke out into a red rash and blisters formed. It took minutes. Thank you very much, Black Tie, for that £20. Very generous of you. So here we go. We have a situation here where this guy has a machine running, which I believe is able to cohere charge clusters. And right when he starts welding, this guy is a welder, he can literally see the hands breaking out into a red rash and blisters forming. Now I knew the cause. My right leg was affected because the welder power cable hangs near my right leg when I weld. The heavy pulsating magnetic field around the cable triggers the reaction. The reaction in my hands was about to reveal the cure. Okay. My hands seemed hot. I measured the temperature of my hands, and sure enough, the thermometer registered an astonishing 107 degrees. A few inches away, my arm was 98.6 degrees. What was happening here? About 3 days later, I picked up a plastic refrigerator magnet to read what was on it. As I read the magnet, I could feel energy hitting me in the face. This energy is the same that comes out of the machine. As I held the magnet, my hands cooled right down. In minutes, the redness was gone. Wow. Okay. What I'm seeing here is something that could be assisted by the electromagnetic field of the welder. It's produced and pulled over, and the magnet also captured the structures. We know magnets can do this with these structures. Apparently what was happening in some atom in my body gets triggered into the above ground state by pulsating magnetic fields, such as you find in a welder or battery charger. It becomes a stove and burns the area around it. I don't think this explanation is what it is. I think I need to read it a little bit more. Thank you very much, P. Atlantis. Thank you very much. So I think what's happening, he's pulling in a vast amount of this chi and charge clusters and static electricity. It's aggregating, and then when he's using welding, he's blowing some of these things up. They're moving around in subquanta. They're collecting near anything that's magnetic, be that the magnetic field around the welding cable or the actual fridge magnet, and focusing these things that are moving around in the environment. Apparently what was happening, blah, blah, blah. I put the magnet in my pocket, and the leg and hands completely healed in a few days. The steady magnetic field around the small pocket magnet evidently returns the atom to a ground state and stops this reaction. The reaction is not a bad thing. It's what reverses aging. The affected leg was in bad condition when the process started. It is now my best leg. The skin looks good, the scars are gone, the leg is much stronger. I have had white finger, a condition that causes the fingers to turn white when exposed to cold weather, most of my life. The hands seem normal now since the reaction. So I'm arguing that a lot of chi is pulled into the hands. I'm arguing that a lot of chi was pulled into the leg, and that whilst this had a short-term apparent damaging effect, the balance of the chi allowed for accelerated healing. Okay, that is my argument based on what is here. Along about the 1st of June 1996, I looked into the mirror one morning and noticed that my hair was beginning to grow back. It seemed as if I was getting younger. This continued since, and I will have all of my hair back in about another year at the rate it is growing. Several scars from very old injuries melted away. I've had several small injuries during this experiment that have healed very rapidly, leaving no scars. The condition of my skin has greatly improved. I think the machine can reverse aging. Time will tell. Okay? I have been nearsighted all my life. For the past year, I've noticed my vision improving. At the rate it is improving, I may not need glasses much longer. Now, this next thing is astounding to me. The bugs. An effect on flying insects has been noted. When the machine is operated to the east, all flying insects land and sit, except the mosquito. Turn on the machine to any other direction and the bugs take off and fly. If flies are held down for 3 or 4 days, they die. We have very few flies in town. The effect is evident for about 10 miles. When I leave town at night, I travel about 10 miles before bugs begin to hit the windshield of the car. For me, this is breathtaking. If you remember, I argued that chitin in wings and in the elytra of beetles vibrated will produce charge clusters, and they will allow a partial support of the mass of the bee, of the beetle, of the insect. Okay, this is something I don't believe anyone has ever discussed before, other than in my presentation where I gave it. And it is the, if I look at the, like a fly wing, right? Fly wing, and I did this in a previous presentation. Microscope. So here we go. This is what you see under a fly wing here. These are lots of little hairs. Okay, and the hairs go to an extremely fine point, and I believe that these will produce charge clusters, because chitin is piezoelectric. You vibrate it, it'll produce piezoelectricity. It'll come off the space charge at the end here and produce these very small evos, effectively. And they will, in the vortex and the anti-vortex, either side of the wings or the vibrating elytra, you will end up by producing a magnetohydrodynamic structure, and this will help it. Yes, and also the 3M force field that will freeze people. It'll freeze people in the same way that I was thinking about this with the Gorgon stare comment in my presentation at Cosmic Summit. And so I think this is one of the most significant paragraphs in this whole thing about the bugs. One, he's operating it to the east. That is where the chi flux comes from. It is the chi flux that I believe helps in the formation of charge clusters, which will allow the fly to support its weight, particularly heavy things like a bumblebee or some beetles. Okay, that is my argument. Okay. And this stops them. And if they are held down for 3 or 4 days, well, what can they do? They can't fly. It's not because they're choosing not to fly. It's because I believe they simply cannot stay airborne. They tire. What happens when they get a reduction in their ability to create charge clusters, they basically tire very, very quickly, and they land and sit. They realize they can't fly. They just, it's like, imagine you're on an electric bike, right? If anyone's driven an electric bike, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a push bike, a pedal bike, where you've got electricity, and a motor helping you, and you're going uphill, and you're feeling like you're a superhuman. Suddenly the battery dies, and you're just full on your pedals, right? Only. You're suddenly having to put all that effort in something that seemed so effortless before. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to go, crap, I'm going to park by the side of the road and change gear, or I'm going to change gear and I'm going to go a lot slower. I think what's happened here supports my idea that it is these structures that allow for a partial supporting of the weight, if not the full supporting in the case of a bumblebee or some beetles. Okay? And I think mosquitoes, they just aren't very heavy. They just aren't very heavy, right? And so probably a mosquito can fly, keep flying, and it's not really got a problem. Okay? So jelly water, again, this is absolutely profound. An oddity concerning water has been noted. When the machine has been running for a few days, standing water doesn't stir normally. You can drag a stick through it and stuff floating in the water barely moves. The normal swirls and eddies are reduced. I have no idea what is happening here. A pond of jelly water was found at one of the Indian Kiva sites we visited. Right, so what I think is going on here is chi is extracted from the water. Chi is extracted from the water, and therefore it does not flow so readily. If you dump chi in water, which is my argument for what is going on in certain cases with overproduction of water gas in cavitation systems, and is what my argument is the case for converting the water that would be in the well in the Great Pyramid of Egypt into water gas before it is then vaporized and comes up and produces hydrogen and oxygen with the ionization in the granite in the Grand Gallery. This is the opposite. This is pulling chi out of the body. And this would be a manifestation of what might cause you to become have a heart attack or whatever. Jelly water. So this isn't quite turning water to stone, but it's making it behave without normal fluid dynamics. It is in fact probably making the water more coherent rather than superfluid, which is a bit weird to think about. If you look at Preparata was a brilliant nuclear physicist in Italy. He actually, the medals that are given out at the Condensed Matter Nuclear Science group are called the Preparata Medal. And he actually did this Coherent Ground State of Water book. You can go and look it up. I've discussed it in the past. You can probably find a reference to a download link off my Remote View blog if you look for Preparata, Giuliano Preparata. And he says that even at normal standard temperature and pressure, a large percentage of water is in this coherent ground state, and that to get it to be easy to absorb by the body, you need to break it up. And that is the purpose of these structured water systems, where you can actually remove some of the large coherent blobs. It's actually the opposite. You're kind of trying to make them easy to penetrate as individual water molecules in, rather than being as one coherent blob. Okay, so I think it's something to do with that. It is most likely, in my view, a removal of chi, because I think if it would be an increase in chi, or maybe it's an increase in chi, it's one or the other. Jury's out, but I think it's a change in the rate of the density of chi involved in the water. Now, I would love to see if the jelly-like nature is either higher or lower if you take water and you put it in the sun in a Petri dish for a long period of time. Now, if it's higher, it's because it's got more chi in it, and then I'll eat my words. Because that might be what's going on in Perevoschikov when he takes the water and he then fires a laser in it to produce the birdies that we were talking about last week. Okay? And in fact, the more I talk about this, the more I think it's got a higher level of chi in there rather than a vacuum gradient. Okay? Vacuum gradient make it fall apart because of the flux of chi going through, but if you can get more chi packed into the oxygen, maybe dissolved in the water, it will then become this jelly state. Okay, that's what I've decided it is. Real time on this thread with you. That's my thinking process. So I think that if you get water and you put it out in the sunshine, or you are able to put a lot of these magnetic structures into the water, it will become more jelly-like. I think that's what's going on. Okay. All right. Yep, that's my final answer, contraption. It's more chi bound into the oxygen in the water. I don't know whether... I don't think it's infrared. No. The fourth phase of water, easy water, is meant to allow better flow. This is not better flow. This is less good flow. It's jelly water. Yeah, something maybe like that. But the easy water is only a few layers next to the boundary, rather than the whole of the pool. So this is a little bit more extreme than easy water. The people in the chat are talking in YouTube are talking about easy water. Okay. Strange cooling. On several occasions, objects in refrigerators are frozen solid following a shutdown of the machine. Okay. My brand new refrigerator will freeze all of the pop and beer. The bar across the street is also affected. The coffee cream comes to the table frozen after a shutdown of the machine. I have no idea what is causing this. It seems consistent with a shutdown of the machine. So maybe if he's got this machine running for months at a time, it's producing a persistent flux of chi, and maybe that affects it. I think that's basically something along those lines is going on. I think there's a very interesting data set here that he's produced. The trees all around town are growing towards the machine as if it were the sun. This concludes the noted side effects. The trees around town are all growing toward the machine as if it were the sun. Now, this is a phenomenal potential experiment which people can do. Imagine you had a device that is producing a flux of things that you cannot see. Will plants grow towards it? So this is one thing we might be able to do with Griffin Brock. In a dark room, can we get germinating mung beans to grow towards it? So what we could do is we could have the Griffin Brock's tube in the center when we are doing our radiation processing, and then we can have mung beans growing either side, and let's see if they grow towards the tube on both sides. Okay, it would be very interesting to see if that happens. Okay, all right. Conclusion. I hope you find this report of interest. I'm not providing details as to the workings and construction of the device. To patent the device would only reveal the means to everyone. Terrorists could use it as a weapon. The inability to detect the device is a problem. It could be buried in the ground and ruin the weather for years. We would be powerless to locate and shut off the machine. I think a network of these machines should be put in place that is run by a company of experts who decide what we want. The cost of the operation should be paid for by the government. The damage caused by a single hurricane that is not stopped will cause many times the cost of this project. The machines are simple and cheap. They will be the smallest part of the cost. Very, very interesting. So he's got a whole load of other things here, but for me, these effects on trees, on cooling, on jelly water, and the bugs and the physiological effects are by far the most interesting. I thank Robert Nelson for this and many other articles that he has gathered together on rexresearch.com. He's an absolute legend in this field, and he is one of the coherent people that will bring about this energy transformation. And so is there any questions from the two people that are in the Zoom call? And if not, let me know. So would you like to ask any questions, Ken? Nope. Yes? Yeah,
I did have one question earlier, but it's vanished. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Do you have any comments on the phrase that I've had the vote going on this week? Any objections?
No objections. I agree with most of the people and the conclusions that are been made so far.
Okay, cool. Asteros, do you want to ask me anything?
Stadios, I thank you very much, Bob.
No
I think
worries.
you made a good decision over on the, or we did, I guess.
Yeah, we
It's a
did.
good team effort.
Yeah.
I only have a little kind of call to action for people. If we're making some shorts and things from some of these YouTube videos, finding some of Bob's and others' best highlights, that would help get the word out
Yeah,
to
wonderful.
a broader audience. In addition, it looks like there's some things happening behind the scenes with Discord, especially for those who want to connect and share and collaborate. And there'll be more news about that, I think, soon with the open forum coming up.
Wonderful.
That's all from me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I can tell you there's a lot of interesting things been happening recently. So, yeah, I'm excited to try and get a reliable source of strange radiation so that we can ensure that researchers are safe, and then we can start building out functional technologies. So, any questions in YouTube? I'm going to look now. So, P Atlantis says, "Where is the Discord channel?" Astros, would you like to answer that?
We do not have a custom link yet to Discords, and we are still in the process of making them. I will say, if you'd like to email me, if you would like to help in the rules and guidelines, emoting and stickers and everything that needs to go into a Discord server, you can email me at sentientcode@pm.me. And like I said, we should have an actual link or something that Bob can put in a description or something by the time of the next open forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's that one. Okay. Arvid Cinematic says, any hypothesis on what this machine was? I think it was a torsion field generator, essentially. Overwhelmed Games makes an obvious comment. You could locate it by looking at the direction trees and plants face. Yeah, they're all pointing at it. Show the machine so I can make one. Yeah, it would be great to just be able to do that. There's kind of an image at the top. Give me the getting younger, says Melafury. It's funny because he's 52 when he was writing that. I'm 52 now. I love this part of my life. Okay. I want... Okay, so if there's no specific questions, I will just close out and say that, and to do that, I need to share the screen. Of course I do. This is slightly better than the method I had before. Okay, I can go here. So this was Coherent Energy Transformation, a new dawn. And I've got a nice looking east here, watching the sun rise over the trees, with the river flowing out of the O here, coming down, nice coherent flow, giving this lush reed beds and grass beds on the side of this stream. Yes, looking east, where the energy flow doth come from. And yes, plants are very efficient within the frequencies that they can absorb of sunlight. And yeah, thank you to all those that took part in the voting procedure this week. I think to have a term that is both aspirational, directional, and motivational, and speaks to the technology, not just that it can produce energy from one form to another. That is to say, not just taking energy and making it into like kinetic energy from thermal energy or electrical energy from kinetic energy or something. More that it can take it and do propulsion, and it can take, for instance, energy and make it into actual matter and vice versa. So it's full on transformation. And transformation being not a subtle change, a radical change, which is what is needed if we're to believe the stories we're told, and that it will be something for good. So thank you very much for your time. My name is Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. It's been my honor to do this work these last 13 plus years, and none of this would have been possible without the support and dedication and intellect of so many people. And I've highlighted one of those people above all others today, and I hope to meet him. He's one of my heroes, Robert. So thank you very much for your work. Buenas noches, dobro noc, good night.